Back in 2021, a second teaser for the highly anticipated sequel to Breath of the Wild was released, revealing that Link's adventure in Hyrule would expand to the skies above, with numerous floating islands. This, along with the possibility of underground exploration being a big part of the game, now called Tears of the Kingdom, led many to speculate as to how the player would navigate the surface, and, more importantly, the Sky Islands. In the most recent Tears of the Kingdom trailer, we get to see Link riding 3 different vehicles: a car, air balloon, and flying machine. Not only did this answer the question we've had on our minds for almost 2 years, but it also led to another, far more interesting topic in terms of gameplay. When you look at all 3 contraptions shown off, all appear to have the same green adhesive, presumably used to bind together the parts making up the vehicles. This implies that Tears of the Kingdom will have some sort of vehicle crafting system, where we'll be able to scavenge for parts all across Hyrule to use for vehicles. But this level of customization appears to go beyond building pre-made designs. When you look at the car specifically, the wooden body itself seems to have been put together by Link, that same green adhesive connecting numerous wooden planks. The same steering wheel found on the car is also present on the flying machine, once again fused together by the green substance. So not only is Link able to connect wheels and propellers to objects, but factors such as where the steering wheel is set, along with the aesthetics of the vehicles themselves, are also dependent on how the player wants to build their contraption. We're looking at fully customizable vehicles, which is very fitting considering this is in the sequel of a game that was all about the freedom aspect of things, allowing you to go wherever you want and play however you wanted. But how much of this mechanic have we really seen? Will customizable vehicles be the only thing utilizing a crafting system?
One big mystery surrounding the 2021 teaser is this robot-like creature, powered by the same type of green energy used by the Hand to seal Ganondorf. And while we see something similar in the most recent trailer, one thing different between the two is that the former also includes a strange-looking symbol. Many have compared the shape to a bell or rope tassel. More importantly though, this same symbol is found on the car's front tires, as well as the underside of the flying machine's propellers. This directly links these vehicles to the robot, as prior to the February Direct, it was the only thing that had this symbol. It's rather obvious that Link didn't create this automaton, given the intricate design of it, the fact it is powered by the green energy, as well as the lack of any green adhesive binding it together. It's not a stretch to believe that it will be somehow related to the vehicle crafting system of Tears of the Kingdom. Perhaps Link unlocks this mechanic upon first meeting the robot, allowing him to fully customize vehicles with parts found all across Hyrule. Currently, we have 2 examples of this, where Link uses a magnesis-like ability to lift one of the back tires out of the mud on the Great Plateau, and in this other shot, presumably in Death Mountain, or on one of the islands above Eldin, as 2 of the propeller parts are seen in the background. At the moment, we've seen 3 types of machines, a 4-wheeled car with basic steering controls, and 2 different flying contraptions. The first being a hot air balloon, presumably without any sort of steering, as it would be limited to vertical movement, and a flying machine allowing Link to fully explore Hyrule's sky portion. While Breath of the Wild didn't have this level of maneuverability or customization when it came to overall navigation, the inclusion of the Sky Islands meant that the Zelda team had to reconsider how players traverse their open world. Despite the first game having a lack of vehicle building in it, one of the items and quests associated with said item acts as a sort of prototype to the idea of combining parts to make numerous contraptions. At the woodland stable, Shamir dreams of a land in the sky where people used to live. This is likely referring to Skyward Sword and not the floating islands of Tears of the Kingdom. However, this quest involves Link using an octoballoon to make one of the barrels float upwards. But this isn't only possible with barrels. Link is also able to attach them to wooden platforms, and with it creating a temporary air balloon that he can then ride on. Not to say that this is the only thing responsible for Tears of the Kingdom's vehicle building, as one such as the flying machine was likely inspired by the creativity of players who built their own flying machines in Breath of the Wild. But is this sort of crafting system exclusively for player-made vehicles, or is there more to this?
In one of the first teasers for Tears of the Kingdom, we got a shot of Link using a flamethrower-like weapon on a new enemy. Many were quick to notice the way this weapon was being held, almost as if it were a shield. At first this may seem like an insignificant detail, but in the grand scheme of things, it implied something much bigger. Rather than this being a flamethrower weapon held like a shield, What if it was a flamethrower weapon attached to a shield? A combination of two different pieces of gear which allow for both offense and defense. Was Tears of the Kingdom going to allow you to fully customize weapons? Prior to this, Conrad brought up the fact that the bell symbol present on the robot is also found on the wheels and propellers of the player-built vehicles. But there is one other shot in which this symbol is clearly seen, on the weapon used by Link when fighting a luminous talus. Also notice that, just like our flamethrower weapon, this one also has a Zonai Dragon, paired with a cylindrical tube in its mouth which fires an explosive projectile. But what if this dragon is actually the same one wielded by Link in the previous shot? And the only reason it looks different is because it's being used in a different weapon build. One is attached to a shield, the other connected to a staff, held as if it were a claymore weapon. It even shares the same attack animation as a two-handed weapon. The only reason we can't see the bell symbol on the former is because it's mounted to the shield. Assuming that this is related to the crafting system, it probably also means that these are spots where parts can be attached. Zeltic even points out in his own video on this topic how the handle of the weapon closely matches the steering wheel, although it's not a perfect one-to-one. Okay, I'm in the process right now of editing this video, and first, yes, this is not scripted. Second, I have to keep my voice down because it's 4 a.m. over here, but I actually think that the steering wheel and the thing that's holding the weapon, that staff, are the exact same thing. Which I'm sure Zeltic is gonna love this because, he first brought it up. But the more I look at them, I think they're the exact same thing, and I'm gonna explain why here. So, if you notice on the steering wheel, the part that Link is steering, there's only two ends. Those are like the two handlebars for him to steer. Now, when you look at the weapon at the end that's attaching to that weird symbol of the Zonai Dragon, once again, as far as I can tell, there are only two bits that are jutting into the weapon. There isn't like a third or anything, there's two. So, first off, what if we assume that those two ends can, bend? Because when you think about it, that whole part of that staff looks very similar to the steering wheel. Now we have to ask ourselves this question. Why have we assumed, up until now, that they look visually different? Probably because of the lower half of the steering wheel. There's that huge, I don't know if it's like a gray-greenish thing. But what if that isn't the staff? What if that is instead, think of it as a sleeve, and you slide the staff into the sleeve. Link takes that handle from the weapon, puts it in, then the ends bend, and then it's a makeshift steering wheel for the vehicle. Or, I'm just overthinking things as usual. As a matter of fact, the cylinder inside the dragon mouth appears to have some of that new script located on the mural, big doors, along with other places. So at the moment, my own theory about the customizable weapons is that they'll have at least 3 different parts. 1, the part Link holds, such as a shield or weapon handle. 2, the body of the weapon, which acts as a foundation keeping all the bits together. And 3, the part which is responsible for what attack the weapon does, such as spewing out fire or launching an explosive projectile. It's even possible that we'll be able to combine these sort of weapons with the vehicles, creating things that allow us to both traverse the open world as well as attack enemies.
However, it's possible that Tears of the Kingdom's crafting will extend beyond vehicles and Zonai-esque weapons. One of the strangest redesigns so far has to be Breath of the Wild's enemies. In the 2021 trailer, we got a glimpse of the bokoblins and moblins, the former having significantly longer horns, while the latter resembling a sort of helmet shape. This appears to have been changed in the most recent trailer, with many of the enemy horns instead resembling weapons. One of the best examples are the bokoblins, whose horns looks incredibly similar to the blades of Lizalfos spears, as the type of weapon varies based on species and color. One explanation is that it is to help differentiate the ranking of each monster, sort of like how golden enemies were stronger than silver. Take for instance the shot of the 3 moblins, where the middle one's horns are different from the other 2. Same goes for the bokoblins as well as one of the new enemies, Boss Bokoblin. One has an axe, the other what looks to be the end of a spear. Assuming that this isn't solely an aesthetic thing and serves some sort of gameplay purpose, it may be that defeating these enemies drop weapon materials which can then be crafted into usable gear. Not necessarily related to vehicle crafting, but a second, much simpler system where the player turns materials into pre-made gear including swords, bows, and shields. It also would be an incentive to go after much more challenging foes, battle stronger monsters for much stronger gear. Though it is rather hard to believe that this sort of crafting would apply to normal weapons such as spears or claymores. You know, weapons you would normally find all around Hyrule. And we doubt the Zelda team would remove these spawns from the overworld and fully replace it with a crafting system. However, as Zelda Law pointed out in his analysis, the object attached to Link's arrowhead is almost certainly a key's eyeball. This means that monster parts will to some extent be used as weapons, suggesting that other monster parts will also be used as part of Link's new arsenal. One example is making use of the elemental chew jelly to create fire, ice, and electric arrows. Or perhaps what Link can craft with monster drops will be limited to brand new weapons with special purposes. This may be the case with our key's arrow since it's shown homing in on the enemy. Though considering we see green energy prior to Link shooting the arrow, this seems to imply that it is the powers of the green hand which give it homing properties. Another possibility is that Link will be able to trade monster parts to Kilton for these sorts of monster-based weapons, as this is his speciality in Breath of the Wild.
The hidden potential that Tears of the Kingdom's crafting system has when it comes to overall gameplay is huge. Many of Breath of the Wild's monster drops and overworld materials were limited to armor upgrades, solving puzzles, or recipes. More often than not, the items which stood out were those that had additional effects outside of these, such as how it was possible to create a campfire with wood, striking shoe jelly for an elemental explosion, or, while not practical, making use of octoballoons. Taking advantage of some of these unique properties, as well as making other much less useful items part of crafting recipes for new gear would be a great way to entice players to explore Hyrule. No longer would players be stuck with hundreds of bokoblin horns, the only two options being to hoard them or sell for rupees. In a way, Breath of the Wild does have a sort of crafting system with the ancient parts scavenged from Guardians. Exchanging these at the Akala Tech Lab turns them into useful gear. But why not expand this to include other materials like monster drops? Skyward Sword also had a system where Link could trade in a variety of materials to upgrade his gear, such as the bug net, beetle, and shields. And who's to say this crafting system will only be for vehicles and weapons? Link might also be able to craft armor sets or other tools he can use to make traversing the new overworld a whole lot easier. On the topic of open world traversal and vehicles, this sort of crafting system may also be used to limit player progression during the early portions of Tears of the Kingdom. The ability to fly anywhere would be the equivalent of climbing in Breath of the Wild. It's likely that there will be other methods of traversing between the surface and Sky Islands, including the use of time reversal on falling debris, as well as these green spiraling structures that may or may not be used to travel upwards. And at the very start, we'll probably be limited to these sorts of traversal options. Since this new vehicle crafting system relies on what Link finds in the overworld, it means that by controlling where some of these parts are found, it prevents the player from skipping bits of the game that would otherwise mess with story progression. For example, in the shot where Link uses his ability to lift the machine part from the mud, it's being taken from the Great Plateau. The Great Plateau is generally associated with the beginning of the game, as it was essentially Breath of the Wild's tutorial location. Assuming that this holds true in Tears of the Kingdom, or at the very least is a place the player can access fairly early in the game, it makes sense if all parts found were related to ground-covering vehicles, such as the car we see. In fact, the machine parts related to flying vehicles, such as the propellers, may appear exclusively on the floating islands, or in late-game sections. Since the air balloon is likely limited to vertical movement, it'll probably be unlocked long before we can build something such as the flying machine steered by Link. Another big question is whether Link will be able to store these parts for later use. They could make it so that you're forced to use what you currently have, and as you traverse through Hyrule, you'll be able to add more parts to your machine. However, this would require you to be using the vehicle at all times, so there will probably be some sort of storage system for these machine parts, or for your currently built vehicles. This also opens up the possibility of having other forms of transportation, such as underground vehicles, or ones that can go on water, or even underwater. Although, the more I see of Tears of the Kingdom, the less I think there will be underwater exploration. But I really hope that I'm gonna be proven wrong here. With that said, I could see something such as the headlights being used for underground portions, so there may be even more gadgets that we'll be able to attach to our vehicles which, depending on where we are, will help with exploration. Lastly, one of the biggest reasons I believe crafting will play such a pivotal role in Tears of the Kingdom is because it's something we've begun to see other games embrace, such as Animal Crossing New Horizons or Pokemon Legends Arceus, games which, prior to this, never had any sort of crafting. Whether Tears of the Kingdom goes a similar route when it comes to basic crafting for weapons and gear, or if it just sticks to vehicles and a select number of Zonai-esque weapons, of course, remains to be seen. In the meantime, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then I do appreciate it if you consider subscribing for more Tears of the Kingdom related content. And special thanks to Commonwealth Realm for joining me on this video. His part of the collaboration will be in the description, so make sure to check that out. While this part solely focused on the crafting portion, his talks about other stuff like combat, puzzle solving, and traversal options. I've been Nintendo Black Crisis, and I'll see you all next time.